In this video, we're going to look at linear interpolation of working out quartiles from group data. So the first thing we ought to notice in this exam question is the groups have gaps in them. So if we look at the distance in kilometers, it goes from 41 to 45 and then it jumps from 46 to 50. So the first thing you ought to do is to write down the class boundaries, as I have done on the left hand side. Now we do this because it's continuous data. Continuous data cannot have any gaps in it. So if we look at the class boundaries, everything is continuous by considering the upper and lower bounds of each class. Then what you need to do is write down the cumulative frequency, which I've abbreviated as CF. And what we notice is the grand total is 134. So what we ought to do now is we're going to learn the method of linear interpolation. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, right, I've got 134 values, so I'm going to do 134 divided by 2, and that's going to give me the following. I get 67. So I get the 67th data point. So my question is, where does the 67th data point lie? Well, this contains group 1 to 4. This contains values 5 to 23. This group contains values 24 to 76. This group contains 77 to 113. This group contains 114 to 128. And this group contains 129 to 134. So the 67th value must lie in this group because that contains the values from 24 to 76. So it's the third row. So we're interested in this class. So the class we want is from 50.5 to 60.5. That's the upper and lower bound of the class boundaries. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a diagram. So we're going to draw a straight line like so. We can have 3 circles in it. We have Q2 here. Now we go to our class boundaries. So the lower bound is 50.5 and the upper bound is 60.5. Now we said that half of 134 was 67. So that 67 goes on the bottom here. Now here's the important part. We want the sum of all values up to 50.5. So if we look in our cumulative frequency, the sum of all values up to 50.5 is 23. So we're going to write that here. And then we want the sum of all the values up to 60.5. So we can go down to our cumulative frequency column here, and that will be 76. So we get 76 like so. Once you've got that, then what we can do is to use proportion. So the way we're going to do it is do Q2 minus 50.5 divided by 60.5 minus 50.5, and that must be identical to the bottom, which is going to be 67 minus 23 over 76 minus 23. So now we're going to get Q2 minus 50.5. Here we get 10. And then we're going to do 67 minus 23. So we're going to do 67 minus 23 here, which gives you 44 over 76 minus 23. So that gives me 53. So now we can manipulate the formula. So we're going to get 44 over 53 times 10, and all of that plus 50.5 by making Q2 the subject of that formula. So now we get here, so we're going to get 44 times 10 over 53 plus 50.5, and that will give me 58.8. So 58.8 is the median. Now we're going to go through the lower quartile. So the lower quartile would be a quarter times n. So in our case, we're going to do a quarter multiplied by 134. So we can just do that on our calculator. 134 divided by 4, which gives me 33.5. So we get the 33.5th data point. So where does the 33.5th data point lie? That's the question. So what we can say is, well, again, it must lie in the same group from 24 to 76. So we're interested in 51 to 60. So we want the lower bound being 50.5 and the upper bound being 60.5. So we can draw that on our diagram here. So we're interested in Q1, and we said we get 33.5 here. We get 50.5 as the lower bound and 60.5 for the upper bound for that class. That contains the lower quartile. Now, what we're going to do now is say, what's the sum of all the values up to 50.5? And we can see it's 23 from our cumulative frequency column. So we're going to write that in our diagram. And we want the sum of all the values up to 60.5, which is, we can tell on our diagram, is going to be 76 on our cumulative frequency column. So that goes here. And now we can work out the lower quartile. So now we're going to do Q1 minus 50.5 over 60.5 minus 50.5. To improve the clarity of that, must be the same as 33.5 minus 23 over 76 minus 23. And now we can use our calculator to work that out. So we get Q1 minus 50.5 over 10. Now we're going to do 33.5 minus 23. So that will give me 10.5 over 76 minus 23. Which is 53. Rearrange for Q1. So we do 10.5 times 10 over 53 plus 50.5. So we can say that we get 10.5 times 10 over 53 plus 50.5, like so, and then we get an answer of 52.5. So now what we're going to do, we're going to work out the upper quartile. So the upper quartile is going to be 3/4 times 134. We can again do that on our calculator. So we're going to do 3/4 times 134, which gives me 100.5. So I get 100.5 fifth data point. That's what we're interested in. Which group does that lie in? Well, it must lie in the fourth group because that contains values 77 to 113. So I'm interested in this group here. So the respective lower bound is 60.5 and the upper bound is 70.5. So let's draw our diagram below. So we've got 3 circles as before. Q3, we know that's 100.5. So we're going to go back to our table now and say we want the sum of all values. So we can go up to our table now and say we want the sum of all values up to 60.5. And we can tell that that's going to be 76. So let's write that on our diagram. So we need to write the class intervals here. 70.5. And now what we want is the sum of all values up to 70.5. So we can see in our cumulative frequency column, that's going to be 113. So let's write that down. So now what we can do is we can now use proportion as before. So we can say that Q3 minus 60.5 over 70.5 minus 60.5 equals 100.5 minus 76 over 113 minus 76. So we get Q3 minus 60.5 over 10. We can use our calculator for this part. We can do 100.5 and we're going to minus that from, in our case, 76. So let's do that here. So 100.5 minus 76 gives me 24.5. And then we're going to do 113 minus 76, which gives me 37. Before we're going to manipulate the formula. So Q3 minus 60.5 is 24.5 times 10 over 37. And Q3 will be 24.5 times 10 over 37 plus 60.5. So now you can just type that into our calculator and then we've got the upper quartile. So we can type that in, which is 24.5 times 10 over 37 plus 60.5. So plus 60.5. And that gives me 67.1 to 1 decimal place. Here's a question for you to try. You can pause the video and when you're done, I will go through my work solution. Okay, welcome back. So we've got gaps in our data. So the first thing we ought to do is to write the class boundaries. So now we have everything we need in terms of the class boundaries and the cumulative frequency respectively. So we know we have 32 values. So let's do what we did last time. We say that we do 32 divided by 2. So we want the 16th data points. So where does that 16th data point lie? Well, it must lie in this group. So we go across and this is the class boundary that we need. So it's going to be 39.5 and 49.5. So we're going to draw a diagram as before. 3 circles, Q2 on the top, 16 on the bottom, and we need to write the respective lower bound and upper bound. So we said it was 39.5 and 49.5. Then we need the sum of all the values up to 39.5, and we can check in our cumulative frequency column that's going to be 14. Then we need the sum of all the values up to 49.5, and we can check that that's going to be 25. Now we can use proportion, so we can say Q2 minus 39.5 over 49.5 minus 39.5 is equal to 16 minus 14 over 25 minus 14. We're going to manipulate the formula. So we're going to get Q2 minus 39.5 divided by 10 equals 2 over 11. So Q2 is going to be 2 times 10 over 11 plus 39.5. So that is going to be 20 over 11 plus 39.5, which is 41.3.